Hey guys, what's up? Hope you're doing well. I'm just getting this podcast up and ready to go here in a quick second. So we're just testing out some stuff real quick, making sure we are good to go, and then we'll get started. Let some of you guys come in, and so make sure everybody can get in here and listen because this is going to be a good one. Anyways, hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Potter Podcast. It's been a while, and I apologize for that for sure because I've just been gone and going a couple places, which has been good, and I got to meet up with some really cool teams and people all across the country and learn from them with their real estate businesses, and then people that we partner with. So I got the opportunity and chance to go meet with Dave Ramsey and his team, and that was pretty fun, being in Nashville and getting to sit and talk with them for a little bit and just discuss some plans moving forward and how we can better each other's businesses. So with that being said, I have given a lot of thought to this podcast. It's one that is near and dear to my heart, and also just I think a lot of things that has happened with our team and with me previously. So I'm going to be sharing some stories here and just how it's affected me. But for the most part, this is for you guys. For anyone that's never worked with a real estate agent or has worked with a real estate agent, I'm going to be very upfront and authentic and real with you guys this morning, and just really talk to you guys about a couple things. And mainly, the topic is things not to do with your realtor and things to know about as you're thinking about those things. So don't do these things, or don't think about these things, or don't act upon these things as we're talking about them, because basically this has come about from what has taken place here in the last couple, I would say, months with us as a team. And I'm going to be sharing some stories with you, some personal stories, and then also some things that have happened, and just want to be real and upfront with you guys. And so I think this is going to be super beneficial for all of us, and hopefully it will open up the door for some good discussion. And I would be more than happy, and actually would prefer and ask you guys to comment and basically let me know your thoughts on what I'm going to talk about today, because we are trying to figure out how to perfect this part of our business, and it's a big part of our business as we move forward, and it's a big part of the relationships that we make with people, and we're trying to fill what I like to call the loyalty gap. We're trying to figure it out, and obviously there are still things that have happened and taken place that have us kind of dumbfounded and have us kind of wondering, what are we doing wrong? And not necessarily in all those cases have we done anything wrong, but I think it's just society in general, and maybe people don't know about some of these things, but maybe people do and they just don't care. And so that's what we're trying to figure out. So without talking about this constantly and getting more involved, I'm just going to break into this. So I'm going to share a quick story, and then we'll start diving into some of these things. So I've got 4 things that I'm going to discuss with you, just for you, so you guys know. So what to know about a realtor and the do's and don'ts of the client. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about today. And so I'm going to open with this story. Like, I remember the first time I stopped by to have like a 2-minute conversation with an attorney, and I bounced a couple questions off of him. He was here in our office, and so we were talking about a couple things that were real estate related, and then also like LLC related and certain things like that. And then a few weeks later, I literally like sat there and maybe had a 2 to 5 minute conversation with him. A few weeks later, got a bill from his office that came in the mail, and it was for like $160. And I still remember looking at that bill and saying to myself, like, what the hell is this for? Like, why do I have to pay this money? And it turns out it didn't matter if I was in that attorney's office for 3 seconds or 30 minutes. The outcome was still the same. He charges a minimum fee of like $160 an hour. So looking back, I'm like, well, I should have known that if I would have known this, I would have spent the next 58 minutes in his office that day learning as much as I could. But I didn't, right? But I learned a very important lesson that day, that time is worth something to a lot of people. And it made me start thinking about my business, and it made me start thinking about my time and the amount of time that I spend with people and clients and networking and all that kind of stuff, and doing a lot of things for free, right? There's a lot of things that we, or at least I do, where I'm, on panels, and I'm going to all these places, and I'm talking, and I'm running masterminds, and I'm doing all these things. Like I said, I just got back from Nashville, and I was doing a mastermind there where I met with other real estate agents across the country, set all that stuff up, took the time to go on that trip or whatever, led these masterminds. I didn't get paid for any of that, right? Like it was just all stuff that we wanted to benefit from one another, which was totally worth it, and was priceless. But again, like, should I have charged something for that? I don't know. Maybe you guys can tap into that here in a little bit. I'd love to hear your comments on some of those things, but let me get going here. What's my point with this story and how it relates to being a realtor? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. Our time is worth something, right? So if you think about it, everyone pays other people to get their opinion for their time, right? Doctors, financial advisors, lawyers, etc., right? It should be the same in our industry, but it's not. Too many times realtors get taken advantage of. They spend numerous hours with clients who then take that information that was freely given to them, and then they go off and they try to sell their own home. Maybe they try to buy a house without a realtor representing them, and they're never really committed to that realtor from the get-go, right? Like, they were just in it to get that information so it could benefit them, right, themselves, and then they could go off and do it themselves. And so I think, like, the lesson one here when looking to buy or sell your home is, when you're talking with a realtor, I'm going to ask you, not just from my perspective, if you worked with me or my team, but like, if you've worked with any realtor, right, like, please take this into consideration, that you need to stay committed to them, right? Like, I'll share another story with you. This happened just a couple days ago, and I had a house listed. And my seller called me and said, "Hey Ryan, I just sold my house." And I said, "What do you mean you just sold your house?" And he goes, "Well, my neighbor came over to me and he made me an offer, and we shook on it and we agreed to it." And I was like, "Okay, well, what's your neighbor's name and phone number? I'll give him a call and we'll get this all worked out, and I'll write up the paperwork and we'll get it done if that's what you want, right?" And again, there were some things there where I was like, I don't know why you agreed upon that price, because it was more than like half of what we were listed for. And anyways, he decided that he just wanted to be done and get out, and he was moving out of the state and needed to go like the following week, right? We just listed like a week ago. So it's crazy to me. Somebody comes over, makes him this lowball offer. He's like, "Yeah, I just want to get out of here and take it." Knows his neighbor, ended up doing, shaking hands with him and wanting to do a deal there. And anyway, ends up doing this deal. And so I end up calling this guy, and this guy says, "Well, I didn't know that there were going to be other realtors involved. Like, we were just basically shaking hands and going to do this on our own." I said, "Well, unfortunately, sir, that's not how this works. Like, I have a listing agreement with my client, and therefore he is going to be paying out a commission to me. But I also asked him, like, are you represented by another agent?" And he said, "Well, not really." And I said, "Well, okay, did somebody show you the house?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, I called up an old friend of mine, and she's a realtor, and she let me in." I said, "Well, then she needs to write up that offer for you and send it over to me, because she deserves to get paid for her time showing you the house and being an agent, and you want to be represented by an agent." And he was like, "Well, I just thought that, there's some way around this." And I said, "Unfortunately, there's not." I'm not going to be the guy that's going to dual end this transaction, which means, write it up for him and represent him and the seller. I said, "No, in this case, you need to have your agent contact me and write up the offer." And so he did. And we got the deal put together and all that stuff. And I called that agent and I just said, "Hey, just so you know, I don't know if your client is necessarily committed to you." And I told her the story about what went down. I was like, "He tried to cut you out of the deal." I told him that's not how it works. You need to be paid for your time that you've spent with him. And she responded and said, like, "This is an old friend of mine. Like, this is someone that goes back where we went to school together. And she's like, thank you for sharing that. I'll definitely have a talk with him or whatever. But again, it just like blew my mind where I'm like, this is somebody that he's known forever. Like, why wouldn't you want to go make sure that that person gets paid for the time that she gave you to go show you this house, to give you the information, to coach you through and offer an information and give you, like, I'm sure she's given him resources and things. And so it just again showed me that, like, man, loyalty in today's world is not the way it was years ago, and not what I grew up with learning from my dad and watching him in sales. So there's this loyalty gap, right? So somehow in our world today, loyalty has been non-existent. Okay, so you as the client have a chance to change this. Like, you as someone who's been working with someone, like, you have the opportunity to change it and not do this for your best interest, but also do it for the person in respect for the time and the information that they've given you. All right, that's just me being serious and being real with you. And it's something that is growing and happens year after year in our business. And we see it with family members, we see it with friends, we see it with coworkers, we see it with whoever, happening way too often. And I feel like I need to address that, because some people, I truly believe, don't understand that from that perspective, right? Like, some people don't understand that, like, oh, well, you don't get paid until you actually close, and so you're not getting paid a salary, you're not getting paid hourly. So it should matter if somebody's taking the time to go show you houses, somebody's taking the time to sit down and grab coffee with you and explain the process and walk you through what it means to buy or sell your home. Like, have a little respect and a little bit of loyalty and commitment to that person for doing that for you, and be committed to them, okay? Especially as a buyer. Like, a buyer needs to understand that, like, the seller is the one that's paying out the commission. So as a buyer, like, you don't pay that real estate agent anything. It comes out of the seller's commission and expenses. And so for you to be represented in a transaction is free. So I don't know why you wouldn't use a realtor to represent you, to have someone looking out for your best interests. Now, a lot of people have said in these situations where they're like, well, the listing agent, we went straight to the listing agent because they gave us a deal, or they, like, dropped their commission. Well, of course they did, because they're going to double their commission, or they're going to basically keep the entire commission now. So, like, they're willing to give up 1 or 2% to do that, because now they get to keep everything. They're not looking out for your best interest, right? They're looking out for their best interest, and they're like, well, now I don't have to pay out a buyer's agent. Now I can pocket some more money. And so if something goes down in that transaction, who do you think they're going to be loyal to? Probably the seller, right? Because they signed a listing agreement with the seller long before they met you as a buyer. So sometimes you got to think about these things, and that's what gets me fired up in some of these situations, because we've seen then the reverse happen, where this does happen, and then I get a phone call and somebody's like, hey, we're getting screwed over in this transaction. This agent isn't going to bat for us. This agent is telling us we need to do this. And I'm like, listen, I can't give you any advice, and I can't step in and do anything or fight for you right now, because you elected to be represented by that listing agent. And I'm sorry, but, like, I could lose my license if I step in and I try to offer you any type of advice. So I have to step away. And that sucks for me, because in most cases, I know those people, I care about those people, and I want to help them. But unfortunately, I can't, because they made a decision to, quote unquote, save money, which really saved money on the seller's part and gave more money to the listing agent. It didn't save them any money whatsoever from a buying standpoint. So again, I just want to be clear on that and talk about that, and make sure that you fully understand what you are committing to if you make those types of decisions. Okay. So number one through all this is stay committed and stay loyal, right? That goes for both sides. Like, the hardest part of commission-based jobs is this. It's getting a clientele to stay committed and loyal to you. And here's the problem that we see, right? Like, in a survey done not too long ago by NAR, which is the National Board of Realtors, and homeowners were asked, if you were to buy a house all over again, would you use the same real estate agent? Okay, listen to the statistic. 90% said that they would. But when NAR went back to them, when they sold their house again, only 17% ended up using the same agent. Do you see a problem there? I see a huge problem, right? I see a gap that's 90% said that they would use the same agent, but only 17% ended up using the same agent. So what's the problem? Well, there's a 73% loyalty gap there, that some clients went on to say that they couldn't even remember the name of the agent they previously worked with. So again, there's two sides here, right? There's the side of, some of these people said, well, we don't even remember the name of the agent that we worked with, which is a huge problem, right? Like, that's a huge problem, and that's on the agents. That's the agent's fault there if they don't even remember who they worked with, because that agent didn't stay in front of them, that agent didn't stay connected with them. It was all about, in my mind, and in that situation, I would say for the agent there, it was all about a transaction. It wasn't about a relationship there. So that's on the agent, right? But I think there are times where it's not always on the agent, right? So it goes both ways, because as I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a financial advisor, again, commission-based, I remember him telling me, this was like a month ago, he said, Ryan, I no longer am doing anything extra for my clients. And it kind of struck me, and I said, well, why? Like, why wouldn't you do extra things like client appreciation parties and different things like that? And he said, too many of them have stabbed me in the back. They've took their services elsewhere. They wanted to give someone else a shot who just got into the business. And he goes, I'm tired of bending over backwards and going out of my way to do favors for my people and staying loyal to them, but have the reverse effect on me. And I was like, wow. And so here's a guy that has been in the business for years, and he was sharing with me that man, I'm just burnt out because I've done all these extra favors for my people. I've given them discounts. I've done all these things. I've brought them gifts for their kids when they had birthday parties and all this different stuff, right? And he's like, I've literally bent over backwards. I thought that they were friends of mine, and then come to find out, they went with someone else. And he's like, I don't know what I did wrong. Now, again, I'm not saying that it's always on the client, right? Or the customer. Because there are situations where you have a horrible experience and you're like, man, I'm never using that guy again. I've been there. I've done that. But what I'm saying is, if you've got somebody that has taken the time to pick up the phone and wish you a happy birthday or happy anniversary, or calling to check in, or has met with you for lunch, or has answered any questions via text or phone call from you when you've needed something, or has been a resource to you, why wouldn't you continue to build that relationship and use that person for future transactions? To me, that boggles my mind, and I think we're still trying to figure that out as a team sometimes, as far as man, what could we have done differently? I literally got a text one time, and then I'll stop on this topic and I'll move on to the next one. But I literally got a text one time, and it was just like, hey Ryan, I just wanted to give you a heads up. We loved our experience with you. This has nothing to do with you. We were ecstatic and happy, and it couldn't have been a better experience. We love the client appreciation parties that you've invited us to. Thanks for stopping by all these times. Thanks for dropping off these items, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, but we've decided to use a different agent to list our house this next time, because I work with her, and she's just getting started in the business. And I remember getting that text and being like, for real? What could I have done differently? And I remember beating myself up numerous times where I'm like, could I have done something differently? And I'm like, honestly, no. I literally went over there numerous times to go out of my way, to drive all the way down there, to say hi, to stop by, to say hi, to send text, to check in, dropping off wedding gifts, all these things, which again, it's not about all that. But what I'm saying is, I took the time, right, to cultivate and to continue to deepen that relationship, and then to have somebody sever that so quickly hurts, and it's hard not to take that personally, right? And then we look at that and we say man, what did I do wrong? And I literally beat myself up for at least 24 to 48 hours of trying to figure out could I have done something differently? And I finally came to the realization and conclusion that Ryan, there's nothing that you could have done wrong. You are loyal to your clients, but sometimes those people don't reciprocate that, and they're not going to stay loyal to you. And I just had to come to the realization that okay, the truth is, there's going to be some people out there that for some reason decide not to use me again. And again, if I did a horrible job, then by all means use somebody else. But if I've done nothing but keep you happy and build a relationship and a friendship with you, it's hard not to take that personal. And so, again, number one, stay committed, stay loyal. That goes for both sides, right? I know there's areas that I need to continue to work on to continue to build those relationships with my clients and my friends. Because once you do a transaction with us, I consider you family. I consider you a friend. Like, you're a part of our family now, the Potter Real Estate Group family. Like, we want to take care of you. That's why we do client appreciation parties. That's why we do these extra things and do drop-bys and surprise you and drop off, things around the holidays and different things like that, because we care and we want to continue to build that relationship with you. And so anyways, we're committed. And so we ask that people would stay committed to us. But if you're working with a real estate agent, stay committed to them. Don't use 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different agents because they're readily available to you. Like, stay committed to the one that you feel that you can trust and that you respect. Okay? Number 2, here's another one because I just encountered this not too long ago. Be aware of agents looking out for themselves and not for your best interests. I've kind of talked about this before, but here's another story that just happened. So just recently, I was representing some clients who were interested in an acreage, and they asked if they could go out to the open house without me. And looking back, I should have went. Okay, looking back, I'm like, that's one thing that I could have changed. I could have went with them. I should have went with them. However, I knew the sellers, and they were listed with a different agent, but I knew who the sellers were, and great people. And then I knew who my people were, and I trusted them, and I do trust them, and I currently have their house listed right now. Okay, so this isn't anything there, but it's let me get into this story from the flip side. Okay, so they ended up falling in love with this property. They called me up and said they were probably going to want to make an offer. And so I called the real estate agent, the listing agent, numerous times. I sent text messages. I even, in the times that I did call, like, it would always go to like the voicemail, and then it would be like, hey, this voicemail box is full. Like, you can't leave a message. Goodbye. And it was like, all right, sweet. So I'm not able to leave a message. I just continue to keep calling. And I continue to send texts and emails, and I got nothing. And so come to find out, some things were going on with the sellers, and they had some family emergencies going on. And so I knew that in the background too. So I was like, okay, just be patient, be gracious. Let's wait. Let's just like see what's going on. And then basically, I finally got to the point where I'm like, listen, I don't want to do this, but I know these people, and maybe I should just check in. I checked in with them. That's how I continued to find out about the family emergencies and stuff. And I was like, I'm just going to back off. And I'm going to hold out and just wait and keep trying to get a hold of this agent. Well, a week or two went by without hearing from the agent. And come to find out, I get a text message from my clients that said, hey, we got a deal together on the acreage. And I was kind of drawn back, and I was like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, well, we went back and we met with the agent there, and we got things figured out. And immediately I thought, like, okay, like, this agent just double-ended this deal with the acreage. But what angered me the most too was that, like, you just took advantage of my clients. Because again, here I am that have spent time with these people on the phone and talking with them, giving them advice, hooking them up with the lender, and going through some of these other things and talking with them about, like, I was literally working with them. And then this agent never returned my call, and this agent never got back to me. And I told her through these texts and through numerous times that, like, my clients were going out there for the open house. My clients were very interested in the property, blah, blah. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, this agent knew that these were the people that were my clients. But she ended up still scheduling meetings and going about meeting with them, and then writes up and double ends this thing. And now she's representing both sides. And what angered me the most too is I'm like, you're not going to be looking out for the best interests of my clients. And now I can't step in and do anything for them because legally I can't. And so it just frustrated me where I'm like, man, I could have done the same thing in that previous story that I shared with you about the seller coming to me and telling me that they put a deal together with their neighbor, but I didn't. I asked them, are you being represented by an agent? And he said, well, yeah, this agent showed me the property. And I said, you need to go get that agent to write up the offer for you, because that's not how I roll. Integrity means the world to me. And so for me, my reputation is not only with the community here in Omaha and with my clients, but it's also with other real estate agents. Because when other real estate agents and when other clients want to go see some of those properties, who am I working with? I'm working with those other real estate agents. So if I'm burning bridges, there's going to be times where that agent probably doesn't want to work with me. And so I'm never wanting or trying to burn any bridges with any party. And so for me, it was just like, man, okay, well, that agent's going on my crap list, and I'm a little upset about that. I wasn't upset with my clients. My clients just didn't know. They really wanted the property. They were continuing to push on that acreage and try to get back to these people, and they got a deal worked out. But I was angry with that agent, because I'm like, man, now I don't get to represent my people, and if something goes wrong, like, I can't fight for them. And that's what angered me the most. And so now I realize someone could say that my buyers weren't loyal to me because they said that they were working with me and wanted me to represent them, right? I get that. I also know my clients, though. I don't think this was done purposely to cut me out of the deal. I just think they were not aware of what actually took place from this end of things, right? Like, I don't think that they were aware of what just happened. They were just excited and happy to potentially get the property, and that someone was there willing to work with them, not realizing what was happening on the back end, right? That they weren't responding to my texts or emails or phone calls or anything, but they were in it for, in my opinion, their own selfish, greedy desires there, which maybe I'm wrong, but I will say that, like, I wasn't too happy about that when I found out the situation. They got the house of their dreams, and I'm happy for them. However, I learned a lesson from my part too, and that lesson was, I can't always trust the other realtor on the other side of the transaction. As much as I want to, I just can't anymore, and unfortunately, that's a sad deal. But what I realized was, like, I should have went to that open house, right? Like, even though I knew the sellers, even though I knew my buyers and had a great relationship and have a great relationship with them, like, I should have went, right? And I didn't, and now I see what took place from that. So number one, what can you learn? Stay committed and loyal to one another. Number two, look out for shady agents, because they are out there, and there are agents out there in this industry that are always in it for just the transaction and the money, right? They're not in it to look out for your best interest. They're not in it for anything other than to continue to keep making money, and they don't care about other people. I'm not saying that was the case here, but it sounds like it in this previous story, okay? Lesson 3, understand how real estate agents get paid. Some people still don't understand this, so I'm going to try to do my best to explain this. Okay, we don't get paid until a deal closes. So I always tell my agents that you can't celebrate getting a house under contract, right? Like, too many things can happen between when an agreement is made and when the closing takes place, right? The real celebration comes at the closing table when all the documents are signed, because, we understand that just because we get something under contract doesn't mean that house is going to close and that you're going to get paid on it. Too many times we've been in transactions where they fall through. Financing may fall through, inspection items may come up that they tend to walk away from. My wife and I have done that. We've bought a house before. We have an inspection, we get there, there's street creep in our situation, where that basically means that there was the cement from the garage and the driveway that was pushing the back of the house and the foundation out, and it was to a point where it was like 3 inches back. So we saw that and we were like, no, we're not doing that, and we walked away. I'm like, if I was representing a client, I would tell them to do the same thing. I just wouldn't want to work with that. I wouldn't want to fix that. I also wouldn't want to disclose that the next time I go to sell a house. So again, looking out for the best interest of the client, right? But it did suck, because we ended up looking around for a couple more months before we found something. But at the end of the day, it was a lot better for us, and it's a lot better for the client. They're going to finally be happy with a house that they know isn't going to have structural issues, right? Another thing I hear a lot with real estate agents is, like, I hear this so many times, like, man, real estate agents make good money. And when I tell someone what I do, many times I get the like, wow, you must make a lot of money, or I hear that the real estate market is hot, so you must be doing really well. While some of that is true, it is only true for about 1% of the agents in our industry. Let me say that again. While some of that stuff is true, it's only true for about 1% of the agents in our industry. It takes a really long time to build enough clientele base to actually start making money in this business. There's a reason why I think it's like the average agent lasts only 18 months in this industry. There's a reason for that. Because they may get 1 or 2 deals together, but then they may realize that like, yeah, I've got like these 1 or 2, 3, 4 deals put together, but now I got nothing in the pipeline, and then they can't go and get any more people in the pipeline. And so they start to realize that, yeah, that was nice for me to make a little bit of that money there, but now I got nothing. And so, what's my point in all this, right? Like, my point is this, right? Like, let me explain. A real estate agent is running a business, and I have a certain number that I need to hit each month just to break even with my expenses and with everything. This number ranges in the multiple thousands for those that are wondering. It's not just 1 or 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000. Like, if I'm being real with you, this number ranges in multiple thousands of those that are wondering what those costs are per month. So that includes my rent, that includes being a part of this brokerage, that includes paying for expenses of people that are on my team, that includes postage, that includes all these different things, right, that are part of running a business. Anybody that has their own business knows that there's a certain amount of expenses and numbers that you need to hit each month in order to just break even, right? If you're tracking or you're budgeting, you know that, okay? So in order for me to just break even each month, I need to sell a certain amount of homes. That is before I actually start netting money and being able to save and invest some. So to put it bluntly, for those of you listening, there is a reason why the average agent lasts only 18 months in the business. They simply couldn't make ends meet because they're not netting enough money in order to cover the expenses that they've spent to run the business to keep it going. My point is this, like, running a business is difficult enough. Providing for my family of 6 is even harder. Like, that's what some people I don't think understand is like, you know, if you're a single agent, like there's an agent in our office, I love her to death. She does like 35 million in volume, but she's a single agent and she doesn't have a family. She's not dating anyone. She is literally killing it. She eats, sleeps, and breathes real estate, right? But the only person she has to provide for is herself, right? She doesn't have to provide for like her wife or her husband and her kids and all these other people, right? Like, it's just her that she has to provide for. So her expenses, right, like on a monthly basis, not just to run her business and her business expenses, but her expenses as far as like even running a family, putting food on the table, paying their mortgage, you know, getting clothes when the kids grow out of them, all these other things, right? Like, she doesn't have to worry about some of those things. She worries about herself. So her expenses are a lot less than what mine are, right? And again, I'm not trying to play the comparison game. I'm just being real with you. Like, I'm being upfront and real with people to help them understand that, like, just because it may seem like the real estate market is hot and you make a lot of money in real estate, the actual reality isn't true that you're making and you're netting a lot of money, right? You're literally playing the balance game. Okay, so the other thing I hear a lot is like, you make 6% on that deal? The answer is no. For one, I don't ever make 6% on the deal. Like, I charge 6% on the commission side. I wish I made 6% on that deal because that would make things a lot easier in what I just explained. But you see, I have to pay out a buyer's agent. I have to pay their brokerage. I have to pay my brokerage. And then I have to pay my taxes that come out of that as well. So by the time I get my cut, quite honestly, it isn't that much. Believe me. So again, a reason why I have to keep grinding is because I realize that there's a number that I have to hit each month in order to just break even. And then after that, there's the money that I need to make to help provide for my family. And so I don't get paid again until a deal closes. So yes, there are times where I get a check and I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, I get that check because I look at it and I'm like, man, I didn't have anything closed last month. And now I might have 6 or 7 closings this next month, which is great. And to the outside world, a lot of people are like, oh man, you just killed it. You made a ton of money. And I'm like, no, actually, I have to go back now and make up the difference of last month that didn't have anything closed. And now I've got to pay those bills and get those things caught up. I then have to pay this month's bills. And then I now have a little bit of a pool over here to maybe go get some things over here for my family or whatever the case is, right? Like, it's not that easy. And I think a lot of people think that, like, and this isn't just for the real estate industry, but I think a lot of people think that, like, oh, you're in a great industry, like out here all the time. My wife was a physician assistant before she stays at home now with our kids. But, like, people would always say, like, oh man, like, your wife's a doctor. She's like, you guys must be doing well then. And I'm like, man, if you only knew, like, if you saw our budget, like, to the outside world, she's a physician assistant, I'm a real estate agent, you're like, man, they must be making a ton of money. And it's like, man, there were times where, like, we were literally grinding and figuring out ways to shift and move money around to make ends meet. That's just me being real. Like, there were times, and when I would hear somebody say that, I'd be like, bro, you have no idea. Like, you have no idea the amount of debt that she carried over from student loans. It was like another mortgage payment for a while, right? Until we were finally able to pay some of those off. Like, you have no idea what those expenses were and why we were grinding so hard and why she was working extra shifts and why I was out there doing what I was doing. Like, we were trying to make ends meet in order to just keep our heads afloat. And there were numerous times, I can tell you this, there were numerous times, and there still are times where it's like, man, we are like drowning and just keeping our head above water. But that's again the benefit that you choose, especially in my industry, where it's like, hey, I chose this and I love it and I love being in here. But the reality is there are times where it's difficult, right? So again, lesson 3, understand how we get paid. Don't always focus on that number, but understand that this is a hard industry, right? Like, the hardest thing about real estate is always being in the hamster wheel. If I say this so many times, from the outside looking in, I am a hamster running in this wheel that never stops. I can have a great year in sales, but at the end of the year, it's the same. The number goes back to 0 in January, and I start all over again. It's exhausting, it's tiring, it's sometimes depressing, but however, like I've said, I love my job. And I would rather work 60 hours a week for myself than work 60 hours a week for someone else. Like, that's the reality. I choose to do that because I love it so much. Like, my job for me isn't a job. It's honestly like a hobby, and I get to pursue my passion and do what I love to do. But, like, that's not to say that it doesn't get exhausting and that it's tiring and sometimes depressing when things have really slowed down and I've got nothing in the pipeline and I'm wondering, how in the world am I going to make ends meet, like, these next few months? But God always provides. Like, God always provides, and we continue to grind, we continue to network, and those relationships happen. So what do I want my people and clientele to know? Like, right? Like, I work my tail off. I'm always on call for you. I'm always putting out fires for you. I'm always negotiating and fighting for you. That is what I do, and I love it. But as I do know that sometimes it doesn't come for free, right? Know that some transactions come easier than others. Know that your transaction may have been the smoothest transaction ever and didn't run into any issues. But the reality is this job is not easy. There are times I want to quit, if I'm being straight up. Like, there are times where I have days where I come back and I'm like, it's 10 o'clock in the morning and I just put out 4 fires. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I am so stressed and so exhausted. But then I go back to that question. It's why I have it framed in my office. Like, remember why you started. Why did you start? Why did you do this? Like, you wanted to help people. And that keeps me motivated and that keeps me going. There are times that I don't feel appreciated or respected. There are times that I bend over backwards and do things for people and give them the best experience possible. And for some reason, like I've shared before, they choose to use someone else next time or they don't use me at all. Does it hurt? Absolutely. But I let it get to me for a period of time, but then I have to move on. Like, I can't soak in it, I can't sit in it, I can't I can't stay in that spot. I take things personal because I am loyal, right? Like that's the hardest thing, man. I just took one of these tests with like some of my other friends in real estate, and she led us through. Shout out to Heidi Harris, you're awesome. She led us through this thing about core values, and when I got done, I realized that basically what the whole process was of going through this was to figure out what's your number one core value. What are you? What's the number one thing that stands out? And so you get this whole list and you narrow it down to one. And so my top three, if I remember correctly, were authenticity, which is you're always wanting to be real with people, right? Loyal was the other one, and then integrity. And then when she asked the question, she goes, okay, from those three, what's the number one thing? What's the number one thing that you can choose out of these three as far as being your core value? And I remember looking at that list and being like, man, this is tough. Like, I feel like if you took authenticity away from me, like that would be a part of who I am. If you took integrity away from me, like that would be a huge part of who I am. And if you took loyalty out, like that would ruin me because I'm a loyal person. I always have been, I always will be. I just wish the same would be for those that reach out and work with me. Like I tell my clients that all the time. I'm like, listen, I will be as loyal and committed to you as anyone ever has been in their entire life. And if you're my friend, you know that. I will die on a hill with you because I'm a loyal person. And I think the reason why it hits me so hard sometimes is because when somebody else isn't loyal, or I feel like wasn't loyal, I dwell on it and I let it get to me and I let it get me down because it's a huge part of who I am. And to go back to my core values, there is I really went back and forth between loyalty and integrity. And I figured out that like integrity was the word for me. Integrity is my core value. Like I will always do things the right way. If that means that I'm losing out on a transaction, or that means that I'm telling my clients to walk away from a property because I don't think they should buy it, or I'm telling my sellers like, hey, we shouldn't take this offer because I believe that there's something better for you. But if you want to do it, great. Like I always want to do the right thing. And I hope everybody that works with me, I hope everybody that is my friend sees that integrity is the biggest core value for me, that like if I ever lost that, I would be ruined, because integrity means the world to me. And so anyways, I hope that challenges maybe you to think about like, what is your core value? What is the one thing that if it was stripped from you, it would totally ruin who you are, your reputation, and moving on in life, like if that were ripped from you? I hope you can think about that. If you want a list for me to send you on that core value, I'd be more than happy to send that to you to look over and to kind of do that same thing. But let me close this out here. I want to be very clear. Most people from my past clientele and current clientele do stay loyal to me. I'm very thankful for that. The majority of my business comes from referrals, and it comes from my sphere of influence. I don't have to spend a lot of time looking for new people to do transactions with, because the people that have done transactions with me and the people that are in my sphere already respect me, already trust me, already know who I am, and they know that core value, right? They know that I'm a man of integrity. I'm always going to do the right thing and always look out for their best interest, right? So I'm just sharing the difficulties that come with this job sometimes and the misunderstandings that take place that some people are unaware of. So hopefully you guys don't hear me being negative or like putting anybody, running anybody's name through the mud. That's not my goal here. It's literally just to clear up maybe some of the misunderstandings that take place that some people are unaware of. So hopefully this has shed some light on some of these things. All right. Number four, let's continue to move forward and close this thing out. Number four, lastly, and then I'll be done. The biggest myth that you can't mix business and personal relationships is a lie, right? For anyone who has ever said that and believed it, shame on you. Like you've heard me talk about this, you've heard me talk about the entire podcast about trust, loyalty, and respect. I believe that some of our best clients are because we have partnered with them in some way from a business perspective or have met them through networking and community events. Some of my best clients are my friends and vice versa. Like, I do business with my friends because I love them, because I trust them, because I want to help them grow their own business. Like, the people I trust and I know will fight for me. So why would I use someone or give someone else my business if one of my friends is in the industry that I'm trying to get something in, right? Like, in my mind, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It never will. So when I hear that from some people, especially those that I'm like meeting with on like a listing appointment or whatever, and I didn't get it, or like they call me and say they listed with someone else because they didn't want to mix business and personal, I'm dumbfounded by it. I'm like, why? Honestly, like, why the hell would you go use somebody that you don't know that you're going to have represent you when you could have had somebody that you know would go to bat for you and would fight for you harder than anyone else ever would? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Now, I know that for the devil advocates out there, right? Like, they say, well, what if something goes wrong and it ruins the relationship, right? That's like the biggest pushback that you get when you bring this up in a conversation. And I would say this to them: then they really weren't your friend. And you might be taken back by that a little bit, but I'm just being blunt. Because the way I do business and my friends do business with me is simple. Nothing comes in the way of our friendship. Nothing. Like, I do business, I go and buy real estate with one of my good friends and partners. And he has been a mentor to me. He has been a great friend to me. I mentored his kids when I was doing youth ministry. Like, we have a great relationship. And when we wrote up like the LLC stuff, and we wrote up these things and said, okay, we're going to go do this and we're going to go buy some properties together, the number one thing that we discussed wasn't how many properties are we going to go get and what are we going to do and how's the money going to work out. We didn't care about any of that stuff. We literally sat down and said this to each other, and we said, listen, nothing that we do, no matter how bad this goes or how great it goes, is ever going to get in the way of our friendship. And we agreed on it. And I was like, by all means, like, I won't let something happen between a house get in between our friendship. Like, that's just not going to happen. And he said the same thing. Like, this is what I mean. Like, when you have those types of relationships, like, I have told friends to walk away from properties because it wasn't in their best interest. I've shared that. I've had to call agents and tell them my clients can't buy the house because financing had fallen through and they can no longer buy. And I've got ripped out and yelled at and cussed at and whatever. I don't care. Like, I'm not, that agent isn't sometimes they're my friend, right? But that agent isn't the person that I'm representing. Like, I'm representing my people and I'm looking out for their best interests. And so if it's in their best interest that they can't afford the house or they shouldn't afford that, to buy the house, we're not going to go buy the house. Someday we will, but maybe now is not the right time. But to me, it's more important there to lose out on a transaction than it is to lose a friendship over it. Like, that's ridiculous. Those are not great situations to be in, but I don't care about being uncomfortable. I care about the person in the relationship I have with the person I'm representing. If that isn't someone you want to represent you in a real estate transaction, then I don't know what you are looking for, to be honest. Like, it completely debunks that whole myth of like, oh, you shouldn't intermix business and personal. Yeah, you should. Like, in my opinion, yeah, you should. You should be doing business with everyone that's your friend. You help them grow their business, but you also know that that person isn't going to stab you in the back or isn't going to be trying to get money or transaction out of it. They're looking out for your best interests and they're going to do what's best for you. That's just my opinion. Like, you can think differently. I would love to hear your comments on that and what you guys think. But like, man, I get into those conversations sometimes with people and I'm like, I don't know how you don't do business without wanting to do business with your friends and family. That is my business. That's my sphere. That's my past clientele. Like, again, when you do a transaction with us, you become family. You become our friends. Like, when you show up to our client appreciation parties, like, I'm giving you hugs. Like, I'm bringing you in because I'm like, dude, it's so great to see you and your family. I'm checking in with the kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, look how big they've grown up. Like, and people are doing the same with us when our kids show up. Like, it's a relationship. it's a family. And sometimes I'm just like, man, why would you not want to do business with those types of people? I don't get it. But anyways, I can go on and on about that, but I hope that this has helped you better understand some things in my industry as a real estate agent. Like, remember these 4 things, okay, for you that we've just discussed. 1, stay committed and loyal to your agent. 2, look out for shady agents. 3, understand how real estate agents get paid and that their time is worth something, okay? And number 4, don't believe the myth that you can't mix business and personal relationships. Like, if those are like the top 4 things that if I could share with anyone out there that's never worked with a real estate agent, like, that's what I would want you to know. The rest of the stuff will come, right? But those are the things that I would want you to be aware of and to know before you just end up jumping into something and you haven't thought about those things. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Those of you that are watching on Facebook, thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your week. Go make a difference in somebody's life today. I love you guys. We'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.